Every night, the most powerful man in the world sat alone and wrote instructions for how to survive the next morning. He commanded an empire of 70 million people across 3 continents. He fought wars on the edge of the known world for 14 years. He governed through a plague that killed millions. He suppressed a rebellion led by his closest friend and pardoned everyone involved. And in the private writings he never intended anyone to read, he described himself as small, distracted, weak, not good enough. The world remembers Marcus Aurelius as the great Stoic emperor, but the Meditations was never a record of wisdom. It was a reconstruction project. Every morning, Rome encountered a version of Marcus Aurelius that Marcus Aurelius had to build the night before. Marcus Aurelius was born in 121 AD into a prominent Roman family. At 17, Emperor Hadrian noticed him, not because he was ambitious, because he wasn't. Hadrian gave him a nickname, Verissimus, the most genuine. And from that moment forward, Marcus Aurelius stopped belonging entirely to himself. He was being prepared for the most psychologically demanding role on Earth, an empire, a civilization, a machine that would eventually require him to become emotionally larger than any ordinary human being can naturally remain. His tutor Fronto described the young Marcus not as confident, but grave, as though he already understood what the world was going to ask from him and was quietly preparing to survive it. And this is what most people misunderstand about the Meditations. It is not a diary. It has no audience, no structure, no narrative. It is a sequence of corrections, instructions, warnings, a man attempting to regulate himself in real time. Think about that. Every night, while managing an empire at war, Marcus Aurelius sat alone, trying to construct a version of himself capable of enduring the next day without becoming cruel. We misunderstand Stoicism because we think it was created by people who did not feel things deeply. But the Meditations was written by someone who felt everything: fatigue, resentment, loneliness, rage, the exhaustion of being needed by everyone all at once. Stoicism was not his personality, it was his containment system. Between 166 and 180 AD, Marcus Aurelius spent more time on military campaigns than nearly any emperor since Augustus. He hated war. He wrote openly about the mud, the blood, the smell of dying men. And he kept going anyway, 14 years, again and again. Not because he loved conquest, because duty demanded endurance from him, whether he emotionally possessed it or not. Then came the Antonine plague. At its height, thousands died every day in Rome alone. And while the empire was collapsing into fear, Marcus Aurelius regulated burials, funded funerals, distributed grain, managed panic. And every night, he still wrote reminders to himself about patience. Imagine the psychological discipline required to govern catastrophe publicly, while privately trying not to emotionally fracture beneath it. And then came the ultimate test. Avidius Cassius, his closest general, his trusted friend, declared himself emperor. The rebellion failed quickly. Cassius was murdered, and Marcus Aurelius was presented with the severed head of the man who betrayed him. He refused to look at it, ordered it buried with honors, and executed no one, not one. The philosophy was no longer theoretical. The test had arrived, and somehow he passed it. And then there was Commodus, the one place the philosophy failed. Marcus Aurelius mastered empire. He mastered restraint, discipline, mercy, power. But he could not master love, and that is the most human thing about him. Because even the man who spent 19 years teaching himself to detach from ego could not detach himself from his son. His advisor saw the danger. The signs were obvious. Commodus was unstable, narcissistic, performative, dangerously obsessed with admiration. Marcus knew. Some part of him absolutely knew, and he chose him anyway. Because philosophy can regulate behavior, but it cannot always overpower attachment. And the gap between what Marcus Aurelius understood and what he emotionally needed to believe undid everything. On March 17th, 180 AD, Marcus Aurelius lay dying in a military camp beside the Danube River. He was 58 years old. He had spent 19 years carrying Rome across war, plague, rebellion, and collapse. And even then, the empire still needed something from him. A soldier entered his tent requesting the nightly watchword, the password that would travel across every guard post in the camp. Marcus Aurelius gave him the word. Go to the rising sun. I am already setting. He turned away and died before morning. The reason the Meditations has survived for nearly 2,000 years is not because Marcus Aurelius was perfect. It is because he wasn't. Because he privately confessed the same thing millions of people feel while carrying responsibility. I do not know if I am enough for what is being asked of me. And then he got up the next morning anyway. The mask of Marcus Aurelius was not deception. It was effort. The effort required to remain decent, while power, exhaustion, grief, and responsibility slowly tried to turn him into something else. And maybe that is what the Meditations really is. Not philosophy, not wisdom, but evidence that becoming who you need to be is a process repeated daily. The gap between who you are and who you are trying to become is not failure. It is the work.